All right. I have Gene Lugat here from Prime Lending, also serving on the board of the National MBA. Gene, thank you so much for joining us on the Keys to the Market podcast today.
I'm glad to be here with you, Jake. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And special shout out to Ellen Wilson, who was able to connect us. So thank you for doing that, Ellen. We greatly appreciate it. So, Gene, I was giving you a little rundown earlier, kind of what we do on these conversations. I'd love to start for our listeners or viewers, whoever's out there. How did you get in the mortgage business? Give us a little rundown of kind of how you got started and how did you get to what you're at today?
Well, it's a great question, and the starting place for me was 42 years ago. I was out of college. I was working at Westinghouse Defense Electronics, and I had run into and had a relationship with Chip Reichert,
Oh,
who would legendarily is a mortgage banker, was a great leader and a developer of talent. And he and I had a good relationship, and he asked me if I would like to come in and review the industry and talk about what the opportunities were. And of course, interest rates were 17%. I went to talk to my parents about what I had made the decision to do. I think my mother actually cried that night and not excited to say that we've been trying to sell our house for 2 years at that time. And interest rates were keeping people from buying homes. And I said, well, Chip Riker told me it was a great time to get in the business. Everybody else was getting out. So
yeah.
therein lies the opportunity, right? In the midst of a lot of people departing, and you can look at similarities to the 2021, 22 environment where so many got in. When I got into the industry, it was obviously high interest rates. So for us, it was developing and building relationships back then in a completely different way than they do today. But at the end of the day, that's how I got into the business. And
Sure.
I enjoyed it. He was a great leader. I think mentors in this business, and you've interviewed some of them, and some of them are my past colleagues, but the Mike Carrs, the Mike Twiggs, the Steve Laganas, the people that develop talent, the ability to bring loan officers in and as assistants and I think integrate them into your business is one of the ways to build the business. And it was certainly an opportunity that got me in the door.
That's awesome. And when Chip brought you in, you mentioned he was a great leader, great mentor. What were some of the qualities you really respected of Chip? What were the things that you took from him and hopefully have implemented in your career?
I think Chip was one of those high knowledge. Key for him, the cornerstones of was being an expert, the subject matter expertise. He demanded I read at that time the 4506, the big FHA manual. And of course, I went back to my room. I was reading that over and over again. If you don't know the verbiage of the industry, it's kind of was like reading it in Spanish, or it could have been back to my classes in Latin. But that said, uh, I did review it and I started to get an understanding, but he believed that if you were a subject matter expert, you could provide value in the relationship. And it was one of the key ways to differentiate from some of the competitors, right? A simple thing that he said to me was, I came in and one of the guys in our office, they had back then they had like it's your business card on the back, it had interest rate factors.
Sure.
And I was using interest rate factors and he just looked at me and said, stop, stop. He said he pulled out of his drawer and he handed me a calculator that I still have today, which my initials are scratched right next to his. But that said, he handed me an HP 12C and he told me, stop learning about the mortgage industry until you can come back and give me current value, current present value, and then where the interest rate is or where the payments are. And I learned how to do that. And when I was sitting talking with clients, that developing an understanding of how to use a calculator to forecast and provide data and information, it's a small piece that back then allowed me to feel a little more confident in what I was doing rather than pulling the card out of my pocket and doing the factors. But the real deal for him was understanding the fact that that knowledge cornerstone not only did it establish credibility and differentiate you from the competition, it allowed you to best serve your customers.
Sure.
And he had come from a family that was entrepreneurial. They were self-employed mother and father. He understood the value of going out and developing one-on-one contacts and relationships. Um, and I took that and leveraged it into my business.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things there that are just timeless, right? Being the subject matter expert, right? Knowing your guidelines inside and out, always looking to differentiate yourself, and also looking at what's the best for the client and how to best serve the client. So it might have been the 80s, but it still feels relevant today.
Right? There's no doubt about it.
So you start with Chip, you originate in loans. At some point, you pivoted to management, right?
I
What was
did.
that? What was that change like? What led to that?
Well, I was a top producer at Merrill National back at again, dating the time of my entry into the space. Uh, when the company was being sold, there were some opportunities for me, and Chip had come from a company called Payne Weber out of Columbia, Maryland, really the Rouse Company's mortgage company. And for those that have been around for a while, that Rouse Residential and Rouse, the development company by Jim Rouse of great fame in the real estate industry. He had developed Payne Weber Mortgage, which was well respected in the community, and it's where Chip came from. I was contacted by another legend in the industry, Hugh Coyle, and Hugh was from Payne Weber, and he recruited me to come over and take over an office in Baltimore County, and I was ready to do so. I was 7 years into the industry. I had just turned 30 years old, and decided it was a time for me to take a leadership role, and had a great opportunity there, and built a great company, for a great branch for them. And it was the thing that I love, Jake, the most about this business that still resonates today. This is, as I related back to Chip's story of being an entrepreneur. It was an entrepreneurial business. There was no templates. People did things differently at each company, but the one thing that was consistent was, if you had the ability to come in and develop talent and lift people around you, make them better, but if you had a bigger case, had the ability to help them get where they wanted to be,
Mm,
share your skills, share your information. What Chip did for me, I was able to go and replicate because I had a great mentor, a strong foundation. I went and developed people and developed an opportunity that became a great and a successful branch that ended up in multiple branches at that time.
I love that. So you're able to take what you learned from Chip, pay it forward, kind of replicate it, and expand it. Sounds like it.
Right. Yeah.
It's
And then the
awesome.
story went, in my 42 years, Jake, one of the things that I'm one of the most proud of, that was one of the first of only two moves I've ever made of
Oh,
leaving
wow.
a company. It's kind of shocking, but I went there. An opportunity at Signet Mortgage, which I took the job to go to Signet, and as a regional manager, and took over
Okay.
Maryland and the DC metro market, and worked with some tremendous people there as well. Again, some legends of the industry, and I had a strong following of people. But that company was sold. Signet was sold to AccuBank Mortgage
Okay.
in 1999. I was kind of leading that for the company through the sale. And other than acquisitions, we were acquired by National City, where I met some of the people that I referenced earlier. And then in 2009, ended up at PrimeLending after National City kind of went the way of many did at the end of that financial crisis period, or during that financial crisis period. They were really the poster child at that time of Secretary Geithner's too big to fail movement that we
Sure.
saw in the business. We were consolidated in, and again, National City was the seventh largest servicer, and we were a bank that was around from the 1800s,
Wow.
1848. So it made it through the Civil War. It made it through, World War I, World War II, the Great Depression. But at the end of the day, it did not make it through 2009. And
Yeah.
where I thought, and many of my teammates thought, would be our home for the rest of our careers, we really loved it there. I was able to go out and find a company that had similar characteristics, leadership. It had a lot of the things that were critically important to me. A great individual there, came in. When you're interviewing Jake, and you find out as you get into the industry, most of the time I met with people, they want to open the back of the P&L to the front, right? They go back, start with the net income, and then work your back. They didn't want to hear your story. They wanted to hear about, how much what basis points you generating profitability, what's your mix of govy and conventional, how much purchase, all those same questions that are relative to all of us today when we're having
Right.
conversations. But at the end of the day, I met the individual Rosanna McGill, and at that time Todd Solomons, who were the leaders of Prime Lending. and a fresh air of the conversation started very early, which is, Gene, just tell me a little about your people.
Nice. That's awesome. I
What's
mean, I
what's
think we're in the
important to
people
you? What's
business,
important to them?
right? You can only look at spreadsheets, you can look at profitability, basis points, all that, but quality people is what really drives a lot of this business in our industry.
Well, it's when you get down to it, I used to always say there's three P's in the industry, and if you can manage those three P's and do them well, executing on all of them at a highest level, but the cornerstone is people.
Yeah,
The second one is a process, meaning the technology, the platform. It has to be a process that enables my loan officers or my teammates to execute one step better than the competition.
sure.
Whether it be through speed, whether it be through product product level and speed, or a combination of accuracy up front, and then in our world, the ability to on a platform, have the loan officers be able to provide service to their customers that differentiates them. So a lot of that is in that process. And then the third P, which I think is always critically important for all of us, and that is that you run a profitable business. You understand the dynamics, you price, you compete, and you bring in a profitable loan at the end of the day.
I love that. My three P's. I'll remember that one.
There you go.
So as you transitioned to Prime in 2009, you've been there a while, but going back, you served as the local Maryland chapter of the Mortgage Bankers Association president in 2000, I think you said earlier. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. I was the 52nd president of them. We're one of the oldest associations. I don't know if you know, Maryland Mortgage Bankers is the oldest MBA in the country. It was 52 years old then, so obviously you had your 26 years. So we're right now coming into, for what's better, almost 80 years of contiguous service to the mortgage banking industry. And if you again back at Payne Weber days, Jim Rouse, he began selling VA loans. That was really the genesis of mortgage banking. He was
Wow.
selling VA loans down to the VA, and they started to again build a business around that, and that was the beginning of the industry, and one of our again, for Maryland, one of the cornerstones of not only our history but our ability to work close to Washington D.C. and serve.
Sure. So you served as president. I'm sure you're still active with Maryland Mortgage Bankers Association. Tell me a little bit about what led you to get involved on the local level.
Jake, it comes down to, again, back to where Chip and others. Chip was involved in the NBA. I started going to some of the cocktail parties. Um, and I looked at it as an opportunity to meet other people in the industry. The only people I really knew were the people I were competing with back then out in the field. It gave me a little bit of a bigger purview of the industry, and I did it as I was a loan officer. When I got into management, I found that networking relationship of other professionals, despite we're competitors, we compete on a daily basis. Um, I really could see the value of sharing information because we began to perhaps look at things from a holistic approach on how we could make things better for the industry. I enjoyed that. I thought, again, how do we serve in most ways the NBA, as I'm sure you're aware, is mostly legislative. Uh,
Sure.
how do we create the best environment for us to originate in, to serve our customers in, um, and at the end of the day, ensure that we maintain compliance to the rules that are being made. So having a hand in the rulemaking, having a hand in what's going on before it maybe gets to a law or to a requirement, we had the ability to speak into that. And I was fascinated by the ability to have that opportunity,
Sure.
and be surrounded by teammates who all were like-minded and making sure we were doing the things we could do to serve, again, the industry that we loved.
So I love that, right? So advocacy is obviously a very important factor with both local and national MBA. Um, can you think back, what were some of those accomplishments you can think of, or were there some challenges or things you were able to help, get those in Annapolis to realize we're going to be negatively impacting our industry? Anything that you recall?
Well, I think throughout the years, there's been a variety of issues that really go back into, from a licensing standpoint here in the state, all the way through as I looked back at my career back, or just reflecting back off the top of my head, how we managed state licensing. And at the time when I was first down there in Annapolis, we were fighting off issues of fair lending even back in the 2000 turn of the century, even back when we had already made significant moves to ensure we were opening up fair lending. My big battle at that time was with Perez out of who ended up going to work for the Obama administration. But at that time, they were looking in Montgomery County. If you did FHA loans and the borrower would be qualified for a conventional, they were automatically going to begin redlining those loans. And they were calling, again, if there was concerns, they were going to look at that as a civil rights issue. And so I was able to go down with some great leaders from the national MBA, as well as our local MBA here in Maryland and Washington, to fight off the fact that if Montgomery County started treating loans that way, we were going to stop originating in that community. We were going to put a wall up around it. And at the time, I'll never forget, he banged on the cruise ship, banged on the table. It was being videotaped, and I had that the camera floating around in front of me, and he was saying, you'll never pull out of Montgomery County. We're the richest county. You won't leave. We've heard this before. But at the end of the day, Jake, rather than going back on who did what to whom, it was the ability for us to say that this would have devastating consequences on the ability to deliver quality product to his community and his constituents. And that we would pull out because we're not going to take a risk as a national company or a bank to come in and have a civil rights violation for doing FHA loans and doing business in that market. So again, we said there's federal rules in place. We didn't need them on a state level. So there's an example of 2000 of what, during my administration, what was really critically important for us. A couple of licensing and keeping ourselves out of the newspaper.
That's ideal, right? Sometimes no news is good news there.
That's true.
So when did you get involved with National MBA?
Well, I served, I ran a couple levels through with pre the presidency and then post. I'm just trying to think back. I ran 2 levels of maintaining and then timing out after 4 years and timing out. I went back in, and in 2011, Dave Stevens and I were speaking at an event, and he asked me to join. And in 2012 and 13, I was working with the Mortgage Action Alliance. It was a grassroots way for me to get involved. And for us, Jake, it was the ability to go out and talk to my loan officers and my competitors and my teammates in the Maryland MBA. Hey, get involved with the Mortgage Action Alliance. Take an opportunity to get more information about what's happening that affects us. But instead of waiting for it to affect us, let's be agents of change to mitigate or minimize any negative consequences. And so for me at that time, that was the beginning. It was something I very much enjoyed doing. While I was growing the company, I was meeting people again on the national level that could help me in different markets around the country. I was building bridges with CEOs and other relationships of leaders that have been the cornerstone of my career for the past, 2 decades. So it was a great opportunity for me. It got me in on the grass level side, and I haven't looked back.
So I love it. I get the text. I get the emails. I love the Mortgage Action Alliance.
Good.
They're doing great work for us on Capitol Hill, and they're making sure that they have our best interests at heart. So you're involved with the Mortgage Action Alliance. You've served on many boards. Are you on the board now for MBA? Is that right?
Yes. And just to go back, that led into, once I was through the Mortgage Action Alliance, and because you go back to things that have impact. And while I get the opportunity, when I was the chairman of the Residential Board of Governors, which is the residential retail side of the MBA, the bill that came up, and Chrissy Ray, who was the former chair, and then behind me was David Batney from Guild, Chrissy Ray. These are some great leaders that I worked with. But when I was coming into my chairmanship, the issue that became our primary concern, or one of the things we wanted to focus on, was trigger leads. And so I began to articulate and build a case and start to get together on what we had. Our teammates at the National MBA looked into the issues that we knew, all of us knew what was happening, but many people just didn't understand. They did not understand how impactful negatively that was for our consumers. So I'd like to say things in Washington can be solved, and they can, but nothing happens overnight. I thought we had that thing to the finish line a couple times, but David Batney, my vice chair, then became chair. He was there to watch it get across the finish line. and to get implemented just this year, obviously in March. Um, and here we are with an environment today where I think, again, the NBA's voice was heard. We had
Yeah.
95,000 people,
Wow.
95,000 reach outs to congressmen and senators, unparalleled, unprecedented, all by
Sure.
electronic transfer. So they have a
Yeah.
record of it. They know who it is. It's our constituents talking to them. And here we were being able to articulate an issue that would have a deep and meaningful impact to my loan officers, our loan officers, and
Yeah.
most importantly, to our customers.
Sure.
No, nobody likes Jake. I took an application with you yesterday, and now my phone, is blowing up.
I had a
And,
client call me one time crying, and
right.
she said, "Make it stop. Make it." I'm like, "I would love to." She's like, "Why did you do this to me?" I was like, I didn't do it to you. Here's what happened." But yeah, that feeling was terrible, right? This feeling of
Well,
there's not really a way to control it. We would love to tell them to stop. Here's what happens, but man, I'm so happy that it's been resolved.
Well, it's great, and I always say when you're on Capitol Hill, the thing is you want to tell a story that relates to the to the legislator and their team. I was with FHFA Director Kathleen Thompson at the time. We were Sandra Thompson, excuse me, and then we were talking through with their staff was in the room, and
Sure.
Jake, I've got my elevator speech. I'm going down it, and I'm recognize the fact I've got a short 3 to 5 minutes to get this across. And one of the aides, when I got done speaking, there was a couple questions. She said, "I'd just like to show you, this is my phone." And she held it up. She goes, "I applied for a mortgage on Monday. This was, I think, Wednesday or Thursday." She
Yeah.
said, and she started through. It was drop the mic.
Yeah.
And for me to shut your mouth and snip and just kind of lean back in the chair and say,
See? Yeah. No, I mean, couldn't have timed that better.
so once again, having the ability to have our voices heard, that's been a great opportunity for us. We always go down there in the Hippocratic Oath. We try to continue to communicate to legislators, do no harm.
Yeah.
Don't talk about things before they get to the street. We
Sure.
don't want to hear about a 50-year mortgage from our loan officers on the street asking when they can have it,
Yeah.
or that
Or
again, as many
crypto?
things
Or
happen.
how many people have asked me when I can start
When can I start
using my.
closing crypto?
Yeah.
Well, I was with Fred Schill, who's one of the Congress people who's serving on the digital community, and even though we're all in the industry, the first question he got asked,
Yeah.
in Washington was, "Hey, when can we start closing loans in crypto?" And there was a deep sigh of, we're in a dark room full of furniture right now. We're trying
Uh-huh.
not to run into too many things, but we're tiptoeing, and we think we'll find a way there. We think we see the value. We understand digital currency being something that we think is important to the future, but how we trade it, how we manage it, how we tie it, and how we price it and manage it, I think is YTD.
I like that. You know, so we talked about some of the things you've accomplished, obviously with the trigger leads. What are some of the next things that are on the MBA's agenda? Are you guys are things like like AI? Is that something we're concerned about
Sure.
as an MBA? Is that something, I hear these reports of Better.com, approved a loan in less than a minute or something like that. I'm just curious if this is getting brought up at the MBA now and what we're kind of taking stances on.
Well, through the NBA, I think we are, when you think about the NBA, they respond to us, they work for us. So if we let
Gotcha.
them know that there is an AI issue that creates concern, then I think it becomes more of an issue that may manifest into something where we start taking action and creating a plan for.
Yeah.
AI to us today is we're still trying to define it like everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been using AI. I don't know if people know it, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we've got, everything is forward thinking,
Well, it's
CRM.
AUS. It's automated underwriting. Yeah.
Well, you walk by a subdivision and my phone pings and you're looking to buy a house. It's
Yeah. True.
we
True.
know it's all going on, right?
Yeah.
And how it's harnessed. I think this is the great thing about this entrepreneurial business for us. We have the ability to run our businesses. If we're harnessing the technology and we're harnessing AI and we're developing level of strategies, how we leverage that, that's up
Sure.
to us. There's people, you don't have to do that. You don't have to have a CRM that's intuitive. You don't need to
Yeah.
know that if your database is the interest rates drop an eighth of a percent and have a flash up that everybody that's eligible, you could send a letter or an email out to everybody that's on that list if you'd like.
Right.
But being able to be pinpoint accurate, detailed in your communication, the ability to do it at a quick level, to pull something up and be able to have an informationally based conversation with a customer on a basis where you schedule or have some ability to look in and see where they are, where the benefits would be, what programs, rate reduction, consolidation, whatever it is. I think all of this technology continues to create an environment for you and me and for our team, for our
Sure.
industry. For those who grasp this and understand how to best leverage it, will not only, I think, provide better service for our customers, more accurate information, more, and quickly, than be concerned about Tin Man, who's one of the companies that I do love. They're great companies, who has a person that's sitting there looking as good as you do today on the
Yeah.
screen and saying, "Hey, who doesn't want to do business with Jake?" And Jake's an AI. He's basically giving me all the information. It's an AI. And that's coming. But
Sure.
how that manifests and what happens to that, I think that's YTD as well.
Well, we've come a long way from your calculator with your initials on it that Chip gave you. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. You're not gonna have
Amen.
your amortization charts or whatever's on the back of your cards.
That's correct. No interest factors for sure.
So, Gene, what would you say to those that haven't gotten involved on the local or national level? What would you say to them as advice or from a wealth of experience in 42 years in the industry?
Well, I've said this, and I've had a lot of teammates who have joined in this. We always say the larger the crowd, the louder the voice, and getting people active in the Mortgage Action Alliance to me is an
Hmm.
easy way for people to gain access to information that I think is readily available and valuable on an automated basis fed to you. You can take quick action and communicate to your senator, your congressman. Push button technology creates something that can happen quickly. You don't have to go back and formulate a letter, even though today, if you want, you can get ChatGPT to write it for you. But that said, you don't
Yeah,
even need to do that. The letters are formatted, they're in there, you click and stick and shoot that off to your legislators. But I would say this to you that, the older I got in my career, the more I recognize the fact if I'm not doing it, who is?
mm, true.
And who's going to speak for us? As I said, MBA and all my colleagues, they've got the best of interest in mind, but they're not practitioners.
Right.
So having practitioners, and I believe this in the residential side, having great practitioners that are leading in their markets and they're doing things to impact consumers in a positive and profound way to get out and just stay active is powerful. Getting active in your local MBA, I think, is critical as well, because then you're in your critical, your knowledge is also then being developed through a base of people that are, again,
Sure.
serving the issues that are affecting you in your state. And most importantly, you develop relations that I think that are long lasting and you'll grow from being involved. I promise what you put in, I have gotten out tenfold.
I
Uh,
believe it.
Both in strength of relationships, ability to communicate with my team about what's happening, where it's going, um, and with a high degree of confidence, knowing that I'm having a positive effect on the industry and making sure that I can do that to help lift my team and their customers across the country.
Well, I can speak on a local level. The more people we get earlier in their career that are voicing their concerns and the challenges they're facing every day, the more we can act on that, right? If it's, I love everyone in the C-suite, don't get me wrong, but if it's just nothing but presidents and COOs, you're getting different perspective on what the challenges are of the organization. When you have originators, rookies, people that have been in the business 5, 10 years, you get a much different perspective on how we can serve our members and how we can make their experience better. So I like the diversity of, the different experiences, positions within corporations. Like it allows us to help more and more people.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And a quick plug for First Home IQ. This group has started up. Dave Savage is a part of that. Kristen Merlissi and myself. They have Bill Dallas. There's a group of people that are out there. It's really educating consumer platform. How do we educate and create a better consumer? When we talk about this administration looking for more ways for affordability, you and I as practitioners know the
Sure.
best way to get a most affordable mortgage is to understand the how you can position yourself to be in that position to get the best interest rate, to reduce your cost, and making sure that customers are educated, I think, is a cornerstone of that first time homebuyer market for sure.
Yeah.
And they were able to just in a short period of time, and this is bragging rights to that team, We had 600 people register for this year's National Advocacy Conference, almost, an increase of about 30% of what we typically have. The First Home IQ people, which are top producers, Jake, like yourself, and I'll send information to you to take a look at it. But
Sure.
just like yourself across the country, top producers that want to become that educator into their communities and ways to do that and to leverage opportunities of knowledge. Again, ways for us to continue to evolve as the market evolves out of this whole entire group of people. They told me they were going to try to get 100 people to come to that. I'm like, well, there's only 450 that come. That's a big number.
Yeah.
We got they I believe the final number came in about 63 people paid their own way, loan officers from around the country. We're on the Hill this year. I just posted
Wow.
something on LinkedIn, but take a look at Dave Savage, take a look at First Home IQ. But those people came and they were first timers out on the Hill, and the feedback I got afterwards was game changing, life changing, and from the social media posts that are flying out from them standing in front of the Senate building, as
Yeah.
they should be, with cherry blossoms in the background. I'm down
Sure.
here advocating for the best interest of my customers, and that kind of thing is really this year was exciting to see. So when you think about it, it was 15% of our population that was there,
That's
came
great.
just from that group of people that talked about just what you said. Can I have a way to get involved? And right after that, that National Advocacy Conference is a great way to. I wouldn't say it's the first thing you should do. I think getting involved locally is important
Sure.
before you jump onto that platform, but getting involved locally with your local real mortgage bankers association, and then getting down to Washington, D.C. for the National Advocacy Conference in 27 or 28, I think should be a goal for great producers that really want to have an impact on the business.
I love it. Well, you sold me. I'm in.
All right, well, there you go.
There's
We have
one
one
more.
more. That's right, 601
There you
people
go.
next year.
Awesome. Gene, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Any parting words of wisdom or things you want to share with our audience?
I just look back at this industry that we're all in. As I said, I think it's the greatest entrepreneurial business you can get in. Run your own business, build your own marketing material, get out there, meet with clients, develop relationships that are life lasting. Our
Awesome.
clients and my clients are still across the board. This is an amazing business. So for all of you who are in there, continue to evolve, continue to grow with the changes that are going out there, but most importantly, lead from the front.
Awesome. Gene, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good
All
one.
right. Have an awesome day.